Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. I'm having a weird one. If not, I hope it gets better from here. Alright, we are back with another MrBallen video. This one was actually suggested by a subscriber. It is titled, Dead Girl Comes Back to Life. No secrets she shouldn't. The reincarnation of Dorothy Eady. Eady? I don't know. It's something. Alright, I'm excited to get into today's story. So go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, come up with someone special. Let's get weirded out. I feel weird.
A 1979 New York Times article described her story as being, quote, one of the Western world's most intriguing and convincing cases of reincarnation. I myself am not a huge believer in reincarnation, mostly because any of the stories I've heard, there's no modern day corroboration of fact. But in Dorothy Eady's case, or as she became known, Setti's case, she has a number of things that line up with her story, with her lifelong story, that she in fact was from ancient Egypt and was actually a priestess in ancient Egypt times. And some of her
Bullshit.
discoveries are pretty incredible, and frankly, Egyptologists and historians that have looked at this case have spent
Bullshit. No. Bro, no.
spent decades trying to prove that she was lying, but can't. She had information that she shouldn't have had that begins to make you wonder, maybe she really was reincarnated. Before we get started, if you could please gently destroy the like button and then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on all notifications, that would be great. I'm going to be posting a ton of content just like this as many times a week as I can. I'm aiming for 3, if not 4, every week going forward, so please come along. The too long didn't read version of this story is you have Dorothy Eady, who as a child has a near-death experience. When she kind of comes back, she believes that she is no longer home, that her home is somewhere else. She starts having dreams about this place. She describes this garden and this big building, and then eventually she discovers that what she's describing is a place in ancient Egypt. And she ends up becoming obsessed with ancient Egypt, and then begins providing information and helping with archaeological digs that leads to numerous incredible discoveries, all from memories that she claims to have had from her previous life. Even if you don't believe in reincarnation and this whole story seems like totally made up, just listen to how the story flows.
Like, I have the goosey bumps. Like, I don't know how I feel about this fucking video. Why do y'all do this to me?
And then try to make sense of how in the world she had the information she had that led to distinct discoveries that nobody else had made. That they found this stuff as a result of Dorothy Eady's information. How do we reconcile that? It's not impossible, but no one's been able to do it yet. So let's see what you think. Dorothy Eady was born into a lower middle...
Hold on. Before we get into this, how many of you out there believe in reincarnation? Okay, I believe in, if anyone believes in it strong enough, it happens. You know what I mean? I'm not saying reincarnation isn't possible. In some religions, that's the way it is. Like, you just keep getting reincarnated. Like, we watched a MrBallen video about the monks. I believe it was about the monks. It was like the ritual that they would go through to like turn themselves into a fucking mummy, just so they was technically dead without, rotting away to nothing and being reborn. And they would worship them because they hit nirvana in the aspect that they got taken away from constantly being reborn and reborn and reborn and reborn.
Class family in London in 1904. She was an only child and she was absolutely adored by her parents. Now, unfortunately, when she was 3 years old, she fell down a flight of stairs in her home and was unconscious. They called the doctor, and the doctor shows up and says she's actually dead. As the parents are talking to the
Oh
doctor,
my
after
God.
about an hour, Dorothy gets up and goes into her bedroom and is like playing on her bed. And the parents come in with the doctor, and they can't make any sense of it. And in fact, the parents were furious at the doctor for pronouncing her dead, because they're like, obviously she wasn't. If she's just fine now, like, who are you? What kind of doctor are you? But the doctor
Where'd you get your doctoring license? A Cracker Jack box? Did they have Cracker Jacks then? Probably not.
swears she was dead. Shortly after the accident, Dorothy develops a strange accent that they can't quite place, and doctors and specialists believe that she's suffering from something called foreign accent syndrome.
Yes, and I have seen that. It's really weird. Like, you could not be from the place, never visit the place. You could not even like the damn place, and somehow end up talking with an accent that shouldn't even be in your lineage. Like, I believe it was older lady from England, I believe, start talking like with a African accent, like Southern African accent, and she had never been there. None of her family was from there, but she got I believe it was a car wreck or something like that, and just started talking with this accent.
Which is fairly common amongst people with significant head injuries. Basically, it alters your speech, and to people that don't know any better, they might think that you just have a strange foreign accent. Dorothy also started telling her parents about this recurring dream she had, where she'd be near this huge building with these big pillars, and she'd be in this beautiful garden. She loved this garden. She talked about the beautiful flowers and her friends that were there, and it was just this unbelievable place. It was like this oasis next to this building. But she didn't know where it was, and she's 3-4 years old, so she's not able to articulate much what this is, but she was just in love with this garden and this location in her dreams, and she talked about it endlessly. Dorothy's mother would find her daughter on her bed either before she went to sleep or when she woke up, crying, because Dorothy longed to actually be in this place in her dreams, which she started calling home. Now, Dorothy's mother would say, but Dorothy, you're home now. And she would say, no, I'm not. I'm not home. My home is in that garden. It's near that building. And no matter how Dorothy's mother tried to kind of convince her that, no, honey, you live here now. You live here. You've never lived anywhere else. Dorothy was unbelievably convinced that what she was seeing in her dreams was her actual home. It was around this time that Dorothy's parents brought Dorothy to a British museum where they had a big ancient Egyptian exhibit set up. And when they went into the museum, Dorothy sees this exhibit and she's immediately attracted to it. And as she gets closer, she starts seeing the statues of the pharaohs and pictures of the pyramids, and she sprints into the exhibit, runs away from her parents, and she's running to the different statues of the pharaohs and of the Sphinx and all of these different icons from ancient Egypt, and she's kissing their feet and she's sobbing hysterically, and she's yelling, I'm home, I'm home, I'm with my people. This little tiny kid is having this revelation that she's found home, and she refused to leave the museum.
And she was kissing their feet like you would back then. Didn't you like kiss feet and stuff back then? This is craziness.
Finally, her parents, get her to calm down. They're pretty embarrassed because people are like looking at them like, what's going on with your child? She finally leaves with her parents, but at this point, now Dorothy has attached that place in her dreams that she longs to go with the beautiful garden. She's attached it to Egypt, to ancient Egypt. And so she becomes completely obsessed with ancient Egypt. Her obsession with ancient Egypt started to get her in trouble. When she'd go to Sunday school, her family is a very, very devout Catholic family. She would compare Catholicism.
Oh God. Yeah, imagine that start fucking with her.
To other ancient Egyptian religions. That got her in a lot of trouble, and in fact they said, you can't come to Sunday school anymore. Then she got expelled from her Catholic school because she refused to sing a number of the hymns that in some way disparaged Egyptians, ancient Egyptians. She was also told that she could no longer attend Sunday Mass for the same reasons. She was basically not welcome anymore. At 6 years old, Dorothy, who knew how to write and read in English, started to take a keen interest in hieroglyphics, Egyptian hieroglyphics, and she said that they were definitely familiar to her, but she had forgotten how to read it. When she was 7, she was looking through a textbook and she saw a picture of the Temple of Seti I, which is in Abydos, Egypt. And as soon as she saw the picture, it was a big picture of the temple, and then next to it kind of like the broken remains of what looks like maybe a garden of some kind. And she immediately said, "That is my home. That's where I'm from."
What?
Right there, Temple of Seti I in Abydos, Egypt. That's my home. And as she's looking at the picture and she's looking at those kind of tattered, broken remains, I mean, this is thousands of years old. She's looking at the area next to this big temple in the picture, and she's like, "That's the garden, but where are the trees? Where is everything? Why does it look like this?" Like, she didn't understand that was thousands of years ago that it was a garden, but she saw the picture and immediately knew it as her home. Also in the textbook was the picture of the pharaoh, Seti I, who the temple was named after. And when she saw the picture of the very well-preserved mummy, she was overcome because she claimed to have known him personally. At age 10, Eady was kind of discovered by world-renowned Egyptologist E.A. Wallace Budge, who offered to teach her how to read and write hieroglyphics, which she picked up almost instantly. Starting at 14, in addition to that recurring dream of the temple.
This is craziness. Like, the goosebumps have not stopped, people. Like, it's got chills up and down my spine. I'm loving it.
Temple of Seti and the garden right next to the Temple of Seti that she claimed was her home, she started having a recurring nightmare where she, in her former life, was in this subterranean enclosure, and she was being questioned by a high priestess who was demanding that she answered her questions, and when she refused, she was beaten. At 27 years old, Eady meets an Egyptian man and falls in love with him, but also, I'm sure on some level, she was marrying him to secure Egyptian residency, because as soon as they got married, they moved right back to Egypt where she could be a resident. And actually, when they landed in Egypt, the first thing she did, she's overcome with emotion when she lands, and she starts kissing the ground and crying and saying, "I'm home, I'm home."
That's crazy.
Dorothy and her Egyptian husband have a son, and they name him Seti, just like the pharaoh Seti. Once Eady moved to Egypt, she started, by her account, getting visits from an entity known as Hor-Ra. Now, Hor-Ra, she claimed, was the spirit of the pharaoh Seti I. She would get into these almost trance-like states at night over that first year she was in Egypt. It was like she'd be sleeping, but then she would get up and be in this trance, and she would start frantically writing in hieroglyphics in the middle of the night. And her husband would wake up and he would see her doing this, and she was like, he couldn't stop her, he couldn't communicate with her. She was just in a trance, recording what she was claiming Hor-Ra was telling her, was dictating to her that she needed to write down. And it was in fact about who she used to be. She used to be, according to Hor-Ra, a woman by the name of Ben Trishit, who lived 3,000 years earlier in the time of Pharaoh Seti I, and who lived in the Temple of Seti in and around that garden. So after a year of her going into these trances and writing in hieroglyphics, she had over 70 pages of transcript of what she claims was her story. And it goes like this. Before being born as Dorothy Eady,
oh, this is going to be the actual... Oh, bro. Oh. This is freaking me the fuck out. I'm not even gonna lie. And I don't know why it's freaking me the fuck out. But like, the goosebumps have not stopped this whole time, people. This whole time.
She was an Egyptian woman named Ben Trishit. Her father was a soldier, and her mother was a vegetable seller who actually died when she was just 3 years old. Unable to care for her, Ben Trishit's father placed her in the temple of Qam el-Sultan. She was then raised at the temple where she later became a priestess. When she was 12 years old, Ben Trishit was given two choices: either venture out into the world on her own or become a consecrated virgin and stay at the temple. Bentrashit decided to take the vows. But a few years later, she meets Pharaoh Seti I, and they end up falling in love, and soon she becomes pregnant. When she is discovered to be pregnant, she was interrogated by the high priest and beaten when she refused to answer, a scene that corresponded to her childhood nightmare. Unwilling to put her beloved Seti through a public scandal, Bentrashit took her own life. Eady's husband grew increasingly disturbed watching his wife go into these trances and write out the hieroglyphics. I mean, she's amassing all these pages of hieroglyphics. Her whole thing was just too much for him, and so he ultimately filed for divorce in 1936. Following the divorce, Dorothy and her young son leave and go live in another town near the Giza pyramids, and she starts going by the name Seti, which means mother of Seti. So she doesn't go by Dorothy Eady anymore. And at this point, she also takes a job with Egypt's Department of Antiquities, and she begins a very lengthy and highly successful career in Egyptology. For nearly 20 years, Seti would research almost exclusively the temple of Seti I and learn everything about not only the temple but the people who lived there, because it was where she believed she used to live. But it wouldn't be until 1952, when she's almost in her 50s, that she finally actually steps foot in Abydos. And it was because of a job transfer that put her there. And in fact, she took a pay cut to get this job. She was so desperate to just finally step foot in the place that she believed was her old home. As soon as she walked into the temple, the first thing she says is, "It's as if I've lived here before." And she quickly sets up a office in one of the temple rooms and spends almost all of her time there. And she even befriends a cobra and feeds the cobra daily, and just has this cobra friend that just hangs out with her, which no one could make any sense of.
That's fucking great, crazy, and I love it.
Lots of rumors swirled around whether this woman was sane, but because her contributions to Egyptology were so pronounced and so useful, that she was very highly regarded. But of all of her accomplishments, of all of the things that she did, the thing that she is most known for is when she was able, as soon as she got to the temple of Seti I, identify exactly where the garden was. For Seti, she'd been having dreams of this garden her whole life. And so she very quickly said, "If you dig here, you're going to find this garden." And sure enough, they dug down and there was the garden. And in fact, she had described the layout of the garden, what trees were where, what types of trees were there, and it was all confirmed. And once they dug it up, she was also instrumental in identifying where to dig on the north side of the temple, where she said there was a tunnel that ran underneath. It was a secret tunnel. And sure enough, they dug down, there was the tunnel. That was something that they had never seen before. Only she knew about it, and there was no way she would have known about it without prior knowledge. In addition, she also pointed researchers to search in a specific area, in an area known as the Valley of the Kings, for a tomb, a long-forgotten tomb. And sure enough, almost exactly where she described, there was in fact a tomb that had never been discovered before. As much as other Egyptologists did not want to accept Seti's claims that she had been reincarnated, and that's why she has all this knowledge, they wanted, frankly, it to be just the ramblings of a crazy person and it to just be some elaborate hoax, but they couldn't deny the fact that she had intimate knowledge of certainly everything that ever happened at the temple of Seti I in the time frame that she claimed to have been living there 3,000 years prior. Fascinatingly, right before she died, when she was 81, she said that there was a secret underneath the temple of Seti I. There was a secret chamber, and there was a secret within that secret chamber. But no one's ever gone down there. No one knows where to begin to look. And so without Seti guiding them, it may be one of those things that we'll just never know. So without any sort of rational explanation for how she would have had all this knowledge or understanding of an ancient culture, it leaves skeptics wondering, I mean, is this potentially a real case of reincarnation, or is there a better explanation? And I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. So that's going to do it, guys. Thank you.
Aliens. It's all fucking aliens. What the hell? So there's more secrets, but we'll never know because she died. That's crazy. This was a great story. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Oh my god. Like I still have they didn't stop throughout this whole video. Like even my legs are goosebumped up. Like I don't know. Like it's just so the whole time. Like I know I didn't even talk a whole lot. Normally I jibber jabber so much. This is just so it had me by my short hairs, people. All right, I really, really enjoyed today's story. Thank you so much for the suggestion. If you enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please go down there and leave a thumbs up. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, deranged, think about subscribing. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Oh, Lord. Okay. There's no way you can deny the fact that she knows something. Like maybe she came across it in like all of her readings where she was so obsessed with it and it just turned it into memories. I don't know, but there was something really fucking creepy going on in this lady's head, and I loved every freaking moment of it, bro. Like,